for example, broccoli. I don't hate broccoli, but I don't love broccoli. And I always thought because I didn't hate myself, that meant I must love myself. But love takes action. And self-compassion is the action. It's the elevator that gets you to that penthouse suite. And that is what has changed my life. Self-compassion getting me there without, like, it's non-fixing, because I deserve it just by being human.
I'm Dr. Williams, and this is my podcast. I have 2 graduate degrees in psychology, am a licensed mental health counselor, and an expert in the area of spirituality. I am devoted to living my best life and am sharing it with all of you. I'm bringing my expertise, education, and life experiences to you through this podcast. Everyone deserves to enjoy life, and that is what I'm here to talk about. Depression, anxiety, grief, you name it, we all go through it at one time or another. I believe there's a better way to come at these things than mainstream mental health care offers, and I'm here to offer you my perspective and dig into discovering how you can feel good no matter what life throws at you. It is my intention to contribute goodness to this world, and the content herein is how I do that. But one disclaimer before we dive in: should you decide to apply the information offered here, be prepared for improvements in your life. You may even live happily ever after, and you'll only have yourself to thank. This is Feel Good Now, the Dr. Williams podcast. Today, I have a special guest. Her name is Andrea Gibson. Andrea, can you let everybody know who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
Yes. Hello. Thank you, Katie, for having me. As you said, my name is Andrea. I am a self-compassion and mindset coach. So it's my passion and purpose in this world to put more love in it by teaching others the power of loving themselves. And I'm the founder of the Unconditional Movement, where I share tips and tricks and teach people how to reconnect with their soul and their intuition, because that's something that I learned to do for myself.
Wonderful. I mean, we definitely need more of that in the world. Love should always be the message, in my opinion. And you and I connected because we were in a podcast group together, starting our venture into the world, letting our voice be heard. And I had posted that I was curious if anybody else was into law of attraction and Abraham Hicks, and you responded. So how is it that you were introduced into the law of attraction?
So in 2021, mid-COVID, whatever we call that now, when we were all locked in that abyss, I joined a mindset coaching program, and it's called Thinking into Results with Bob Proctor. And that was the first step I took into really understanding the universal laws. From there, one of the ladies that I did the course with, when I was like really getting tired of hearing Bob's voice over and over, she suggested Abraham. And I looked them up on YouTube and immediately fell in love. Like, there was just this relaxed knowing of, this feels true to me. This feels safe.
It just resonated with you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had that experience as well. I mean, when you hear something and it just feels like truth to you, it just lights you up. I love that feeling. You mentioned that Bob Proctor talks about other universal laws. Would you touch on that a little? Because I'm really only familiar with the law of attraction.
I'm not the best to quote them all, but like here, one that really made another difference to me is the law of compensation, which is, I mean, the same idea-ish as karma, like what you put out into the world, you get back. But where that really helped me is I grew up as a competitive dancer. And so with competition being such a huge driving force in my life for so many years, the judgment would creep in so quickly when I was ready to compare myself to what others were doing. So even when I became a dance teacher, I was so afraid to share my knowledge and what was working for me in class and with the students, because I felt like it would take away my specialness. Now I have nothing. If I tell you what is my worth as a teacher, then if you're going to do it, right? So that law really taught me that the more I speak my truth and I share what's working for me and the people around me, the more love and the more knowledge I'm going to get back. Yeah, abundance, that scarcity mindset versus the abundant mindset. And that made a huge shift in my life.
Yeah. Abraham always talks about how you don't feel like you have to be sick in order to allow someone else to feel well in the world. Like you're not sitting there going, well, I have had a whole lot of wellness lately. And so I'm going to take on some sickness so that some other people can feel well. It doesn't work that way. There's really enough for everybody to have this abundance. It's not like the idea of money where if I have it, you don't have it. And, it's all enough for everybody.
It's interesting you say that too, because that's a mindset shift I've been making around money for myself as well, and not seeing the negative that goes with it. So for example, me wanting more money and then feeling guilty about that. So allowing that want to be there, but also working on allowing that satisfaction for where I am, like Abraham discusses all the time.
The satisfaction. And I love that you're using the word allowing, because that's really the message. That's where the manifestations come into our reality, is once we are able to get vibrationally aligned and allow it into our experience. And you mentioned, those thoughts of money and how they were associated with guilt, and that's disallowing. That was resistance. And so money wasn't coming. Can you talk about that? You know how this works. The law of attraction is a vibrational reality, and you're aware of that. How are you using it in your life to get what you want?
I think, like for this year, in this moment, in this season, right before New Year's, I go out on a walk by myself in nature to find my word of the year. What is my word of the year going to be? This helps me create a theme instead of a goal. I'm what I call a recovered perfectionist. So I can get a little obsessive sometimes about goals. And if I don't hit that A+++, feeling defeated. So I'm very aware of that with myself. And as I went for this walk, the word that came up for me was allow. As soon as I heard that word, my whole body relaxed. And I'm turning 40 this year, and I can feel the magic in that number. I can feel in my being what this year is about to unfold for me. And it's so important that I don't get in my own way. And by allowing instead of overworking and forcing, I know it's going to shift what comes to me because I'm open. We all know that what we resist persists. So even when the ugly emotions are coming up, and there's no ugly emotion, that is like little Andrea talking, like being afraid of anger or deep sadness, or when my kids are having a tough day, it's actually serving me in those moments. And what I'm really trying to do in those moments, as I say, okay, notice that self-awareness is there, I'm going to allow this to unfold, is to not then to try and immediately figure out why it's happening. Because I can get caught up in overthinking and involving my mind. And allowing to me is so much about trust.
That gets you in that feeling of downstream motion, going with the flow. Because anytime you start looking at it and trying to understand it, you're entering resistance in there. And you said that did you call it a recovering perfectionist? I can relate with that so much. So much. I've always been type A, and I've talked to my listeners about how it's changing. Now that I'm practicing the law of attraction and I'm meditating and I am allowing more, I find that I'm not as in my head about it. And I'm not as critical and needing it to be perfect, like just letting it be.
That's also easier when you're following that inspired action.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And I do something that's really helped me is the concept of imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. And so by allowing the imperfect action and my ability to show up, I'm creating these beautiful, or they're creating themselves for me, learning curves that I then get to move through.
That sounds like a real appreciation for life. Like you're just looking at what's coming and just appreciating it as it comes, taking that control element out of it.
It's a practice. Like, I'm going to be honest. It's a practice.
Well, speaking of practices, what are the things that are keeping you in that zone? Or do you have like a daily ritual or practices that you do to keep you there?
So what I'm doing right now in this season, when I wake up in the morning, I get up an hour before my kids and I meditate immediately. After that, I do what's called a morning meeting, where I go outside. I prefer outside versus in. It just immediately almost like opens up my mind. I feel more grounded, even though I'm sitting in my backyard. There's trees to look at, there's birds, and I take 10 minutes and I drink my coffee and I just be with myself. There's no to-do list invited. My phone is not allowed to be there. And I just sit with it and I see if a word comes up for me. Because my theme, allow, is there, but there's other days where all of a sudden I'm like, patience. Ugh, why? I don't want to have to deal with patience today. I want a day where I don't need patience. And then it's just trusting in that throughout the day as it kind of like grounds me down to what I need. Then as I get ready, I put on Abraham in the background. And I feel like it's just almost this healthy way of brainwashing me into where I want my thoughts to guide me. Like a support system, calling in those supports. Because when we wake up in the morning, and believe you me, this has happened so many times, my to-do list starts going right away. I have all these things I need to do, these people I need to show up for. And then we wonder why we don't want to get out of bed. Like, where's the joy? Where's the joy?
Yeah.
Right? So finding a way to choose my thoughts, but again, a healthy way. Like, how can we allow that to-do list with no judgment, hold space for it? Oh, I see you, Andrea. I see you, to-do list. You're so afraid of letting someone down today, and that's okay. It's because you care so much about the people you're showing up for. How are we going to show up for you?
When you were talking about your meeting, I literally got chills over here because I was thinking that is such a good way to make your whole day better. When I first started meditating, I started doing it whenever I could. It was like I'm a stay-at-home mom and I'm busy and I just tried to fit it in wherever I could. And Abraham does suggest doing it in the morning. That's kind of like a little extra magic that happens when you make it a priority in the morning and it sets you off on the right foot. But what I like about your meeting that you do after meditation is because you're already in that state of alignment. And now you just sit with it and you just allow whatever to come, but in a different way than meditation, because meditation takes some focus. You're focusing on not thinking. And this is more of a focus on what kind of thoughts am I getting? What are the messages for my day?
Yeah, and that has been my biggest step into reconnecting with who I am in my soul. Being, here it comes again, a recovered people pleaser. I don't know why I have to sing it, but that I was so disconnected from what I wanted and what I needed that the last few years has been a coming home, a journey back to myself and my soul. And Abraham's message has been a big part of that because it rang so true for me without it needing to, without me forcing it or wanting it. Like, it just was like, I almost knew it already is how it felt. And it just gave me all these reasons why the shifts and pivots I were making were important. The first law before the law of attraction is the law of vibration. And that for me was so huge in realizing, like, fighting those old paradigms of why I wasn't allowed to show up for myself, why I had to give everything to everyone else. when I realized when I take time for me and I fill my cup and I find my joy, it lifts my vibration. I pull in and attract the people I deserve and need in this life. And I also then positively influence the people around me. I'm changing my family dynamic just by taking care of myself. Like, that's magic.
Yes, I agree. I think of moms specifically who really could benefit from this. I actually did an episode on, I had terrible postpartum anxiety after my second son.
Yeah.
And it was a really dark time in my life. And so I did this episode talking about what I went through and how if I had known then what I know now, I would have started while I was pregnant, meditating and visualizing how I wanted things to be when the baby came. And I know in my heart of hearts that that would have set me up for more success. And I probably wouldn't have had such a hard time. Putting yourself first really does serve everybody else. It does.
And it's okay that we didn't know that, right? Because we were trained differently. We were brought up differently. And our parents, like, you think what we went through was tough, and it was. I'm not belittling that, but they were held in an even smaller container in a situation where kids weren't allowed to come into the room and talk. You know, like, there's been so much growth that way. So it's important that we also trust in that divine timing, because if you hadn't gone through that, who knows where you would be. Like, this is a big reason why you are where you are now. And that's such an important insight for me to carry, because I also had postpartum depression, was not diagnosed with my firstborn until my secondborn was 9 months old. And there's so much guilt and shame that I can carry around that, especially when I think about the law of vibration and what I would have been putting off and what my kids would have felt. But that's the reason I'm here now. That's the reason I made those changes. That's what opened me up.
Yeah. And not only that, think about what it's going to be like for our kids, because we know this stuff now. We're doing it different. And they are vibrational beings, and they're picking up on our vibration. And I get so excited thinking about what the world's going to be like when they become adults because of this. Things are shifting.
Oh, I feel it.
Yeah.
I feel it in my bones.
Yeah.
Let me take a minute to tell you guys about Andrea's upcoming soul care course. She's going to talk about this a little bit toward the end of the episode, but I wanted you to know that she has another opportunity coming up here in a couple months, and there's really nobody better to talk about it than her. So she's going to tell you when that's going to be and how you can go ahead and sign up for it now so you don't miss your opportunity. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to her.
Hey all, it's Andrea from the Unconditional Movement. My soul care course launches again this May. If you've done the counseling in the past and you're ready now to learn how to reconnect to your own wants and needs through spiritual and self-care practices, I would love to help guide you on the journey back home to yourself. You can check me out at theunconditionalmovement.ca or follow along on Instagram at The Unconditional Movement. Mwah!
But the mental health piece, since you touched on that, some of my listeners come to the podcast because I am a psychologist and I talk about mental health. So do you feel like you can see how law of attraction could benefit mental health for people?
Oh, 100%. I think where it gets sticky is they need to be in the receiving mode where they're ready to hear it. Like you said, I wish I would have known this when I was pregnant with my son. What if we heard it and we just weren't ready to? Like, we weren't ready to sponge that in yet. So that's where I find it's a bit of a balance. How can we get those mental health episodes to a safe enough place where we're ready to listen and be open? Because I know even still for me, with the amount of accountability that comes with it, that can be a hefty shame spiral. So it's being very aware of that. Like, I did a lot of excavating of my thoughts and trench work before I came to this. And I feel like that has done me a huge service. Same with self-compassion. The reason my self-compassion practice is so strong and has stuck so well and is a part of who I am now is because I did that excavating work beforehand.
Did you find that once you were listening to Abraham and you learned about the emotional guidance scale, did that help you put mental health, the depression that you experienced, into perspective and allow to see it maybe in a different light? How when you're in those lower states, that's the contrast that's helping you to clarify what you want.
It did create a level of awareness in where it wasn't because I was broken, because I went through a lot of depressive cycles in my life. So really, why I was surprised about the postpartum depression, I don't really know, because I've had those cycles leading up to then being a mom and thinking, how do I A++ this? Oh, I know. Let's just forget myself. That doesn't really work. What I loved about this and what is huge for me and has changed my life is baby steps. And the emotional guidance scale really breaks down those baby steps where you can move from one, I'm so angry. I'm angry. And you look and you're like, oh, but I bypassed these two. I hopped over that one. This anger feels pretty good right now.
Yes.
I love the way we can shift the perspective that way. And it makes it manageable.
Yeah, that was actually my favorite part when I was talking about how if I was in therapy with somebody who was suicidal, I would start promoting them to feel unworthy and revenge and anger, and therapists don't do that. But if you can do that and take those gradual steps up, that can really benefit somebody.
And you had also mentioned earlier, if we don't mind hopping back, visualizing the birth of your son and visualizing all like the health. And I think that's such an important aspect of it because our brain thinks in pictures. And when we visualize things and we picture ourselves there in that moment, our subconscious brain doesn't know the difference. So by doing that, we're actually also creating new neural pathways. To me, I'm just like, get so excited. It is. It's like magic to me. I can't, I'm salivating right now.
No, it really is. I agree with you. Yeah. Abraham talks about imagining all the time. Imagine it the way you want it to be. Do the creative work. That's all creative work. You can focus on the way it is and it'll stay that way. Or you can imagine it the way you want it to be.
And feel it.
You have to feel it.
Feeling it is the most important part because then your cells, they're sitting in that soup. They're seeing it. They're believing it. That's the difference. And that's why when you understand about we think in pictures, for example, if I was going to say to you, what color is your car?
That's like the funniest question you could ask me because it's an ongoing question of what color is this? My car is the weirdest color.
But did you picture your car immediately?
Yes, I did.
There. That's the point. It's a muddy green gray.
It is. It's kind of the sagey kind of. I don't know what to call it.
That's hilarious. But that's the point is we do it all the time and we don't even notice. So I'm also a recovered worry addict. So I really do. What was I visualizing and picturing all the time? Worst case scenario. Consistently. I was just marinating myself in what could go wrong because those were the neural pathways I had. This is coming from a judgment-free zone, right? But what are we attracting in those moments? Then I would be like, maybe I can see the future because I totally was worried this was going to happen and now it did. Well, maybe you just attracted it.
Exactly. Yes, that was big for me too. I had those things too. I would worry about my baby dying all the time. And I'm like, why am I thinking about this? I am not going to be taking my son on a boat. And here I am visualizing him falling in the water and drowning. It was awful. It was awful. But yeah, and then obviously I would not want to take him on a boat. So glad I didn't create that. But but yes. Yeah,
Right?
the fear and then being validated when it turns out the way you worried it would. And then you feel like, see, I knew that was going to happen. Well, there's a responsibility there that a lot of people aren't aware of or don't want to accept, that your energy is creating things.
Yes. And that is why I've come to this conclusion in my mind, because I'm very self-aware. I've done years of counseling, cognitive behavioral therapy, because I want to be accountable for my own happiness, and understanding the spiritual side of things and the universal laws has really launched me forward to this place where I feel at my safest. Right? But those fears can still come up. So we need to be very aware that self-awareness without self-compassion can feel like self-sabotage. And what I mean by that is when we're aware of our thoughts and they come up, it's too late. Like they're there. So instead of us being frustrated about them and shoving them down, or what I did, judging myself for having them and feeling like a failure and defeated, we need to hold them with love. So like I said earlier, when I was talking about getting out of bed when your to-do list is running, I've had it before where I've gone to say goodnight to my kids and then stood at the door and so afraid of losing them, like you said. And I just have a moment where I go, wow, Andrea, you love your kids so much. They mean the world to you. And it's so important that they are happy and healthy. I see that. You are such a great mom. And it's okay for you to be afraid. Do you feel the shift in energy there?
Yes, I was just going to say what I loved so much about that is you recognized that you were focusing on what you don't want. And that helped you clarify what you do want. And then you automatically put your focus there and made that grow, because it's all about momentum. And you could have gone either way with that.
Yeah. And I went the other way for a long time, which is why I can lean so hard this way. Like I said at the beginning, it's a practice. It's a journey. And as a recovered perfectionist, I was always so obsessed with the finish line. And I can still even catch myself now. And by being obsessed with that finish line, I didn't even get to enjoy when I hit those goals, because guess where my brain went to? The next finish line. And then I wondered why I was burnt out and tired, because I was running a race with no ending. Right?
Yeah. Yes. So how does this come into play with the work that you're doing? Because I feel like you're drawing from some of that and how it is that you use your life experience to help others.
I think a lot of what I have come up against in my life, where I've made my biggest learning lessons, is conditioning around what it's meant to be female, what it looks like to be a good mom, how to show up in this world as a good girl. And by understanding more about the law of attraction, by understanding more about self-compassion and loving myself and how safe it is to put myself first, I really realized all of these trials I had growing up where my parents couldn't be with me emotionally. And there was so much shame around that because I was such a big feeler. It triggered them that I was in the ring. I did the work. And now it's like I see the light. I cannot believe I'm on the other side. There's so many more layers. We know that. But I'm like, okay, look, come with me. Follow me this way. I see what you're going through. And I have the most magical idea. I just want you to spend 10 minutes alone with yourself in the morning. Let's start with that. Like, I just get so excited about the fact that I'm guiding others with love instead of fear. And for me, that is a big part of where I struggle growing up with religion too. If it's fear-based, it didn't feel right to me. And I did a lot of, well, I'll learn about this one and I'll study here and I'll go to this Christian group and see what they have to say. And there were points where I was like, yes, this is right. This feels good. But the fear side and the you must show up this way side was an immediate no in my heart. So finding the universal laws, finding a way to be spiritual on my own terms, and having people like Abraham to listen and remind me consistently has been a game changer. And I want to help others find that because it's like freedom. It really is. That's the best word I can use to describe it. And there are moments throughout my week, especially when I'm out in nature, where I feel held. And to me, that's safety. And what do we want in this life? We want safety and we want love.
I can't really add anything to that, but I felt like you were speaking to me because I felt that way too. Once I discovered these truths, I wanted to share it with the world because it was changing my life for the better. And that's what we're doing here. We are just sharing who we are and really putting ourselves out there and allowing other people to resonate with it. Let's just assume that everybody listening right now is in the receptive mode. What is the one thing you want them to know?
That self-love is not woo-woo. This is a place that you can get to. And the best way I can describe it for you visually is self-love is like the penthouse suite that everyone wants to stay in. There's a hot tub in the living room. Your bar is stocked with all your favorite treats. Like you walk in and it smells like eucalyptus and lemon, and there's your favorite beverage sitting for you on the counter, and you just immediately feel not just safe and loved, but like, this release of yes. That's where we all deserve to be. How do we get there? This is where people get that disconnect. Because if you think about, for example, broccoli, I don't hate broccoli, but I don't love broccoli. And I always thought because I didn't hate myself, that meant I must love myself. But love takes action. And self-compassion is the action. It's the elevator that gets you to that penthouse suite. And that is what has changed my life. Self-compassion getting me there without, like, it's non-fixing because I deserve it just by being human.
Wow. Okay, how can people find you? I feel like people are going to want to know how to get in touch with you, how to learn more from you. Where do they go?
So right now, my home is basically built in the Instagram realm at the Unconditional Movement. And that's where I share all my tips and tricks and tools that come up for me as I go on my self-compassion journey. I work very hard at sharing with authenticity and vulnerability. So if I'm in a moment that's a struggle, I will hold it close to my heart. But then once I'm out on the other side with perspective, I will share it with you so that you know this is not a pedestal situation. This is 100% attainable for you. And that this, like we've said today, this is your journey. This is a choice. It's a practice. You can also find me, the Unconditional Movement .ca, because I'm in Canada, and I have a soul care program that I do. It's 3 months long. I just closed the doors for my launch I just finished, but they pop up every 3 months throughout the year.
Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I really enjoyed this.
That concludes this episode, but if you don't want to wait for the next episode to come out, I have more for you at drwilliamspodcast.com. You can learn more about me and my journey to podcasting, find all the ways to connect with me on social media, and there's a button to subscribe so you're the first to know what's new and upcoming. You also can shoot me an email at hello@drwilliamspodcast.com. You are so special to me, and your support does not go unnoticed. I want to support you too. This podcast is my outlet for growth because when you teach something, you hold yourself accountable and apply the information in life. But the inspiration for these episodes comes in a variety of ways, and one of those is through you. I want you to feel like this is your show too. So send me a message and let me know which episode is your favorite and why. And tell me if there's a topic you'd want to hear me talk about. Your feedback applies to so many people, and your suggestion could change someone's life for the better. The best way to do this is by subscribing to the show and leaving a review through your favorite podcast platform. I really listen to you guys, and this dialogue feeds my soul. You say that you're a fan of me, but truth be told, I am a fan of yours. Everything is working out for each of us, and we're all in this together.